Welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you all the steps you need to know to create a mobile application. How you can set your styles, your colors, effects, and grid. The advantage of setting your files in this manner is that if I want to change the color for the primary in this project, I will click on the edit, come in here and then paste the new color. And once I do that, you notice that all the primary colors have been changed. If you're new to my channel and you want to show your support, kindly hit the subscribe button. To follow along with this tutorial, I've made the resources available in the Figma community. So click on the link in the description below to get the resources. After opening the link in the description below, it's going to open this file. So you're going to click on the second page here, which is the C doc. Here, I'm interested in all these files that are available here, so I will highlight everything here and copy this. I'm going to take this to the screen I will be using. Now, I can paste everything I want here. To get started, we are going to create some design files. I will do that for each of the section. To get started, I'm going to click on the empty space here. And you see we have local styles. So I'm going to create a local style for this art design. So the first one I'm going to add is the color. After that, I will name the primary color. And then I'm going to select the color and I will use the picker and then pick this primary color here. After that, click on the create style here. I'm going to do that for the second one here. Add a color style. So this time I will name this dark. And then I will pick this and then open the eyedropper and then pick this dark here. Then I'll click on the create style. I'm going to fast forward this video so that we don't spend much time. So you can do that for the others. Once you're done creating the colors, we want to do one more thing again. We want to add shadows. To do that, I'm going to click on the local style here, the plus sign, and then the next thing I'll add is effect. So this one is going to be shadow large. So now I'm going to add some settings here for the shadow large. So here the blur, I'm going to make that 35. And then the y-axis, I'm going to make that 20. The percentage here, I'm going to make that 4. Then I can use the black here. 171,439. So this is for our shadow now. So after that, make sure you're clicking on the create style here. Then we're going to add another effect here again. So this is going to be shadow, but this time small. And I'm going to do the same thing. Click here and then add some settings here. So for the blur here, it's going to be 16. And then this is going to be 6. The percentage here is still going to be 4. And I'm going to maintain the same color, 171,439. So after that, I'm going to create style. The next thing we are going to add on the settings here is the grid. So I'm going to click on the grid here. So this time I'm going to name this mobile. Here we're going to click on the settings here and I'm going to change this to columns. So this time it's going to be 2 columns. And then the weight here, I'm going to make that. The margins, I'm going to make the margins 32. And then the gutters here, I will make that 16. So once you're done with that, you're going to click on the create style. Once we have this, we need to create different styles for our text. And to do that, I'm going to do the same thing and select the local style. Here, I'm going to pick text this time. So here I'm going to say heading. And for the settings here, the heading is going to be 24. and this is going to be semi-bold here, and I'm going to work with pop-ins. So here, make sure you're selecting the semi-bold, and I will click on create style. I'm going to add another local style text, and this time it's going to be subheading. And for the size here, I'm going to make that 16, and it's going to be semi-bold, and I'm going to select pop-ins, and then make sure you're selecting the semi-bold, and then click on create style. I'm going to add another style again. This is going to be for my text, and I'm going to do the same thing, change that to pop-ins, and then I'm going to use the medium for this. So this is going to be 14, and then I will create a style here. Then I'm going to create the text small, which is the last item on our list, text small. So this is going to be 12, and I'm going to use pop-ins here. So this is going to be regular, and then I can click on this create style here. So now we've created our local style. If you're starting a project, this is how you start your big project. So now we're going to add a screen here. This time I'm going to be using iPhone 14 Pro. After adding that, I'm going to drag this to this section here. So the first thing we want to do is to add a layout grid, but we've already created a style for that. So I'm going to click on the 4 sign here and then select the mobile. You see that style is applied here. If I want to make any changes to the grid system, I can just click here and then come back to this where I have my grid system. If I click this, I can click on this settings here and then make adjustments here because I feel that is too big. So now I can close this, and then you see the settings will be adjusted on my design here. Once you have this, we can zoom in, and then I want to use rulers here so that I can hide the grid. So I'll go to the left hand side and then drag a ruler and then drop it somewhere here. So I have to zoom in so that I'll make sure that this is sitting perfectly. If you don't have a ruler, click on the left hand side here, go to view and make sure that the ruler is checked. Now we're going to do the same thing for this other section of the application. So I'll drag that, zoom in, and make sure this touches this point here. So at this point I can select this and then hide the grid system here. So this is what we are going to be working with. So I'm going to select this, and for my fill I'm going to change that to the primary color. Notice I'm clicking these 4 dots here to get this primary color applied here. I'm going to create some buttons component. To do that, I will create a button here, and I will zoom in so that we can see. I'm going to give that get started here, and then the size of this text, I'm going to click here and then apply a style here, which is this, and then I'm going to press Shift A for that. After that, I'm going to now add a fill to this. So the fill is going to be primary. So you notice I just click this side here, and then I'm going to change the color of the text here to white. You can also add white to your local variable. Now I'm going to drag this here till I'm getting something like this. Then the next thing I want to do is to make sure I want to change the size of this. So I'll make sure I'm not selecting the subheading here. So let's say I'm picking on the text here. Now I want to add an icon here. So but this icon, I want it to be conditional. It can be toggled on or off. So select the frame here and convert this to a component. So after converting this to a component, what we need to do here is to add a property. So you select the component, and on the right hand side click on the property here. This time we want to add an instance swap here. So this, I will just name this icon, and we can pick any instance here. So here we have icons on our frame, and then we have all the icons. So I'm going to pick this mobile here, and then I will click on the create property. This time, to get that working, I'm going to right click and then go to icons and then drag any of the icons. So I'm using this, I'll drag it and drop it in here. So now I'll make sure I'm changing the color to white. After changing that color to white, the next thing we need to do here is to change the border radius of this. So I'm going to scroll up here, and I need to increase the height of this. So to do that, you can easily do that by increasing the height here. So it's going to affect your button. So we have 56. Now, the next thing I want to do here is to make sure that I'm changing 56 divided by 2. So I have this rounded border radius here. But this icon here, we want that to be optional. So to do that, I'm going to click on this and then add another property here. So this time it's going to be boolean. So icon on the left hand side. So by default, let's say that is false. So I'm going to create that property. Now I have to select this icon here and then scroll down to where I'm having the layer, click on this and then make sure I'm applying the icon left. By default it is gone. So we can as well create a variation for these buttons. So now I can come in here and then go to assets and drag this button here. So this is an instance of this component. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a white background here, and we need to change that to white. After changing that to white, let's click on this and add some designs to this. I'm going to make this 32 and then I'll click here and make this 24. Once this is 24, I can click on this my button and add it somewhere here. I can adjust this button here to fit in here without affecting the appearance. So now I have some text. I'll go back to our files and then I'll scroll down here to get these two texts. I'll copy these two files and then bring them right in here. So I'll drop them directly here. So for these two files, I'm going to select this and then make sure that I'm applying this font family we created, which is the heading here. I have heading. I'm going to select this other one and apply the second one here, which is our text here. So I'm going to apply text to that. So we can zoom in here. We can drag this to open this. If we want more text, I can do this here. I'll do the same with this. Drag this here and then drag this here. That depends on what you want. So we have these items. So now the next thing we want to do here is to create an indicator. To do that, I'm going to scroll in and then click on the rectangle and then add an indicator. So this time, if the width is 40, so I'm going to reduce the width here to 32. Then the height, I'm also going to reduce that to 12. So now let's select the fill, the colors here, and then add that to our primary. So we can now say 12 divided by 2 to get a perfect border radius for this. So I'm going to press Ctrl D to drag that here, and I'm going to make sure that the width is the same with the height here this time. So now we can change the color here to accents here. I'm going to double click and then I have the third item. Next thing you want to do is hold shift and select the three items. Press shift A and then we can double click to change that to indicators. Indicator. So now we can convert this to a component, and I'll click on the asset files and then here I can drag this and then drop it here. So now we have our items here. So I can align this. So we can now, with the knowledge of layout grids, I can select these items and then group them by pressing shift A. So now we have a more aligned item, and I'm going to press hold shift and select this other one, then shift A, and we have our items like this. I can select these two items and then align them to center like this. So now what we need here is to add an image of one of the doctors here. So I'm going to select this image and then duplicate it and drag it and then drop it somewhere here. Dropping it somewhere here, you notice that this is at the top of this. You can right click and then send to back. Once you do that, we have this here. So we can now zoom in for this particular picture here. So you can try to center this after zooming in. So now we need to add a text here, which is the CDoc. So this time I'm going to add the field here, heading. Okay, we have the heading here. So I'm going to drag that here and then bring this here. So I'm going to change the color to white. So after adding this now, we now have the first screen. Before we move to other screen, let's add some little design to this. I'm going to add a rectangle like this in this manner, and I'm going to drag it and drop it somewhere here. This time I'm going to rotate this. Make sure it's inside here, so we can actually push this to back. I'm going to right click and then send to back. So once you do that, you're going to change the field here to Ascend. Change the field to Ascend. Can reduce the opacity to 10. And then you can duplicate this. And then we can have something like this. Drag that, and then you can always increase this. So now we can duplicate this. And then we can duplicate one last time. Then we can bring this somewhere here. That depends on how you want this to look. And now we can proceed to the second screen. To add the second screen, I'm going to click on the frame and then I'll select the iPhone 14. So we're going to add the same settings here. I'm going to add the layout grid here by selecting this mobile grid. I'm going to introduce the ruler by dragging this, and I'll drop this here, and I'll do the same for this. So I can zoom in now and make sure that this ruler is well aligned to this. And we're going to move to this other side and make sure that we're doing the same for this. Now, the next thing we want to add here is I want to select the frame, but this time I'm going to create a custom frame. Drag this and then drop it somewhere here. And for this, we're going to add a field to this frame, and it's going to be our primary color. So now let's select this and then hide this grid. After adding this, we're going to introduce another ellipse here. This time, this is going to be the user profile picture. Then I'm going to add a text here that says hello. Then we are going to add welcome. In this, I'm going to apply the text here. So we have hello, welcome. Now I'm going to add another text here. So this time now, this is going to be a subheading here. So we're welcoming this user to our system. So after adding these two items, I'm going to select this and then add a rectangle here. I'm going to hold shift. So after adding this, I'm going to zoom in and then drag this to this point here. And I'm going to add a border radius of 4 for this. Here we're going to minus the fill and then add a stroke to that. Change the color of the stroke to accent. So now to add an icon here, I'm going to click on the icons and then drag the notification icon and then drop it in here. So now we can change the selection color by changing that to white. After that, I can bring that somewhere here, and then we can add an ellipse here, tiny one, drop it somewhere here, and then zoom in, then change the color, that's the fill to danger. So we have this here. The next thing we want to do here is to add another frame here. So this frame, I'm going to add a stroke to that, and then I'm going to change the color of the stroke to white. So now we can now change the border radius of this to 16. After changing that to 16, we need to add some icons. So I'm dragging the search icon, I'm going to drop that here, and then I'll look for the filter icon, also drag it and then drop it here. So I'm going to select these two items and then scroll down to the selection color and change them to white. Now I'm going to add a text in here. So this text is going to be search for doctor. So now I'm going to drag the text here and then resize that. So this time I'm going to change that to small here. That's the text small. So now we have all of these items here. So I can now select this and then adjust this a bit here. So we need to change the shape here. So while selecting this particular frame, click on the border radius here. We're changing the last two. So I'm making this 8 and I'm also making the last one here 8. So let's add 16 and say 16, and then this, we're making this also 16. After having that, the next thing we want to add here, make sure we select this and then change the border radius to 32. Now we have 32. I'm going to select this here and then change the opacity to 20. So now I have this here. Now we need to scroll down and then add some text here. So this is going to be your symptoms. So now this is going to have the property for subheading your symptoms. After having this text here, I'm going to go to the asset file and then drag this button to this place here. So now what I want to do here is I want to create a variant for this button. So to do that, I'm going to click back on the layer here and then look for this button here. So I'm going to select this frame and then click on this to add a small variant here. So for this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to name this small here. So for this small here, we want to adjust some of the properties here. So first I will start by changing this to 8. So I'm going to reduce the height to 10 here. After having this, I can also reduce the width of this. To do that, I'm going to select the text here and then double click here. So I have this small here. So after having this, I'm going to select this and then change the text size here to this small here. Now if I want to use the small button, I can go back to this screen here, select this, and then I will have this property here, small. Now I can decide to turn on my icon here. So now we have this button here which is small. So and when I select this now, I can decide to change the icon that I'm having here. So let's say I double click on this icon here. I can now click on this section here and say I want to change this here. So now I can select any of this icon here. So once I have this, I'm going to select this text here and change it to snuffle here. So I can select this here and then Control D to duplicate, drag this here. So this time I'm going to change this to high fever. Then I can duplicate this again, drag that, and I'm going to change this to nauseous. Let me select this icon here and then change this to high fever. I'll look for the emoji with temperature and I'll select this and I'll look for double click and I'll look for the other emoji here. But these two buttons, we want to change the colors. So I can scroll down here and then here I'll select this and add another variant. So I want to have the same property for this. So now for this variant, now I'm going to change that to small minus then muted. The first thing I'm going to do here is to scroll down and change the color of this. So I'm going to use the accent here and I'm going to change the text color here to dark. After changing that, we're going to apply the same settings we did here. So here it's the border radius. Here I'm going to select this, change that to 8, and then the height of this I'm going to change that to 10 here. So I'm going to double click on this and then here. So I'm going to select this and then change the text here to this small here. So we have this here. So if I select this, you look at the name here, small muted. I'm going to go back to this item, select this, then I'll click on the drop down here, small muted, and I'll do the same for this. I'll select this and change that to small muted. So we can now zoom in and select these three items and then press Shift A to add them in an auto layout. I can zoom in to make sure that this is aligned here. I'll just drag this to make sure it's touching here, and then I can zoom in here. Okay, so now the next thing is select this space between them and then set that to auto so that we have this fully aligned. So once we have this, we are done with this section. The next thing I want to do is I want to add a card. So what I'm going to do is I'll select this and then click on this to make this visible. Then I'm going to select the rectangle here. Just for clarity, I don't need the rectangle. I'm just going to use this for my image. I'm going to drag this and make sure that it's aligned here, and then this is also aligned here. So this is where I'm going to be placing my elements here. So the next thing I want to do now here is to select this back and then hide this. After hiding this, I'm going to add a text here. So let's say Dr. Anas. So Dr. Mansas here. I'm going to click on the shape tools here and then select the star. So I can just add a star here. So after adding this star, I can now add the ratings. Let's say 4.5. So for this, I'm going to change that to 14. I'll select this and also change that to this text here, which is 14. So I'm going to add here the name of the hospital. Okay, so I can say this is a dentist. Then so for this text here, I'm going to drag that in here and I'm going to change this to small. So let's make sure that this too here. So after changing that to small, I'm going to change this color here. So I'm going to change that to muted here. So now let's just drag this here, and then for this I'm going to increase this here to get that perfect. So we can look at the size of this. This is 14, so I'll close this and make sure that this is 14. So here we can just pick a yellow color here for this star. Yeah. So the first thing you're going to do here in the grouping is I'm going to select this star and then this, and then press Shift A to group them. So the spacing between them here is 4. So now I can select these two items and then press Shift A to also add them in an auto layout. So I'm going to use the center here. Now I'll select this hospital and then this other one, and then press Shift A to add them in an auto layout. After doing that, I'm going to select this. Instead of having this, I'm going to use auto. So this here, the spacing between them, the group, now I'm going to use this. And here it's by default it is hot content. Once you have this, I will open Unsplash and pick an image of a doctor. So I'll click on plugins here, click on Unsplash, then I can search for doctor. So now I'm going to select this doctor here. So I can quickly just duplicate this, drag that so that I can add another picture of a doctor. So once we have this, I'm going to drag this outside. So here I'm going to select this image here with this group here. Then I'm going to press Shift A to put them in an auto layout. So once I've done that, I'm going to add the fill for this, which is white. After adding the fill, I'll scroll down here and then add an effect to this. So I'm going to select this and then select the LG latch here. So now once I scroll to this side, let me just add this here. You notice we have our shadow effect here. So let's work on this to add some space in here. I'm going to double click to select this group, this down one here. Then the margin on the left and right, we can increase it. So the margin on the left and right, I have 12, I have 6 here. After having that, we have our image here. So this image, I'm going to select the image and change the size here to fill container. After having that here, so the height also, I will just say fill container. Let me select this here. After selecting this, the spacing between this item, you can reduce that so that we have something like this, since this inside one have a padding. So select this image, and then for the border radius now here, because we want to affect everything here, I can now select this and change the border radius for this. To do that, I'll come in here and select this and set that to 12. After setting that to 12, select this and make sure you're clicking on this clip to content here. So now I'm going to adjust this 12 and make that 8. So let's close back and see if this is well aligned. So for the sake of this project, I think this is well aligned. So I'm going to select this and then bring this here. But now we have an initial measurement for this. I'm going to select the frame here and then click on this icon. So you notice that this is beyond this column. So I'm going to click and then drag this here. But if you notice that this section is not responsive, so to fix that, I'm going to double click here. And then instead of fix, I'm going to select this and say fill container, and say fill container. Once that has filled this container, I'm going to double click to select this other group here now, and then instead of hog, I'm going to set that to fill container. So now we have this responsive card. I'm going to select this item here and then hide this. After that, I can now select this and then duplicate this here. So I'll drag this and then drop this here. Now I can select this image here, press Ctrl C, double click, and then make sure I'll click this and then paste that here. So now I can select this image and then delete it. So I'll make sure that the height of these images is the same. So the height of this is 16,116. So I'm just going to make this 116 here. So we have our card here. So now I can delete this item here, and you can go ahead and even convert this to a component. So we're going to add a text here. I'll click on this and then I will add a text here, favorite doctor. So this is going to be subheading. So let's select these two doctors and then drop that down here. So we have favorite doctor. Then I'm going to add another text here, which is see all. So now we're going to make that small, and then the color should be the primary here. So I'm going to select the two and then press Shift A to add them in an auto layout. Then select these two items, Shift A also to add them inside an auto layout. After that, we're going to add another section again. So I will select this and then duplicate this. So let's correct the spelling here. So now once I correct that, we have this, and I will just drag this here. And then make sure that the spacing between them here is auto. So I can duplicate this and then push it down. So this is going to be top doctors, top doctor here. So now I want to create another section here. So to do that, I'll double click to select the text, these two groups here. So I'm going to Ctrl C to copy, and then I will select this frame and then just paste it in here. So I can now drag these items here that I just copied. I can drag them down here. So for this other section, we need this information. So but this time I'm going to rearrange this. So I'm going to select this and then press the minus sign to remove the auto layout here. After that, I can now drag this and then bring this downward here. So let's rearrange this. So for this here, I'm going to remove that from the frame. On the right hand side, drag it, and I'll delete frame 9. Then here, I'm going to drag this also downward here. After doing this, we need to add an image of the doctor. So I'm going to select here and then pick a rectangle, and then I'll add a square here by pressing Shift. So this is going to be the image of our doctor. Then let's adjust the border radius here. I'll make that 8. After that, we have the doctor's name, and then we have his specialty, and then we can also have the rating down here. So but for this rating, I'll double click and then change this to small. So now I'll do the same thing for this. I'll reduce the size to 12 here. So for this, I can double click and then add more text here. I'm going to say this guy have over 700 reviews. So I want that in lower case, 700 reviews here. So now we're good. So we have this ratings and the rest. So I'm just going to add hold Shift and then increase the height of this image a bit here. So once we've done that, I can now bring this. Let's arrange these items here. We have this. So let's click on the rectangle and then do some tiny lines like this. So for this, you're going to make sure that the height of this is 1. The height of that is 1. So select this, and then we're going to add the accent here. So we have that line here. So let's arrange this. Item 1, and item 2. That's these two. I want to group them together by pressing Shift A. So now I can now align them here, and then the spacing between them, I can make that 2. So the next item I want to group here is this two here, this and also this. I'll press Shift A, and then the space between them, I will adjust that also to 2. Then now I can select the two, group 1 and then group 2, press Shift A. So we have these items here, making one group. The next thing I want to do here is to hold this also and then press Shift A to add this. Now click on this side because we want it to start the alignment from the left hand side. But for this, I want to increase the size of this here by holding Shift and Alt, then drag this a little so that we can get something like this. Okay, this is good now. So now we can select the parent container and then add a fill to that fill. So once you add a fill to that, let's scroll down again and add the effect, so LG latch here. So now after adding the effect, we can now increase the padding on the left and right hand side. So let's make this 12. So I can drag this in here, 12. So I can just manually do this, increase the size of this. Then top and bottom, let's make that 10. So if I click outside and I zoom in, you see we have our card item here. So let's do something to the settings here. I'm going to adjust this and then change the border radius here. I'm going to change that to 12. So we now have border radius around this item. So now let's add an image to this rectangle here. So I'm going to use the unsplash and then I'll select that. So I will search for doctor and we can pick any. This. So we have here. So here I think I would just want to change this to this guy here. Okay. So now we have our this section here. So the next section we want to add here is the navigation bar at the bottom here. So to do that, I'm going to add some icons from here. So I'm going to use this icon 1, press Shift to select all of this, then I'll press Ctrl C and I'll bring them back to this mobile here, Ctrl V to paste them, and then I'll drag them in here. Then I'll do Shift A to add them in an auto layout. So I'll manually drag this here and then I'll drag this here. So now I'm going to change this to center, and then the spacing between them I'm going to use auto, and the margin on the left and right hand side I'm going to add 16 here for this. Then top and bottom I'm going to add 12. So after adding 12, we can now add the fill to these items. So I'm going to click on the plus sign here to add a fill. So let's drag this so that it covers till this end here. So if this is 16, let's drag this down here again. So I'm going to increase the height of this. After adding this, I'm going to select this and then go to the effect here. So the effect I want to add here, we don't have that. So I'm going to click on settings, and then here I'm going to make this 10, and then here we can make this 10, and the blur here we can make that 20. So you now notice we're going to be having some shadows there. So here I can reduce that to 15. So if I click back on this, you notice we have this shadow underneath here. So this icon color, we can change the selection color to primary since it's the active one here. So after having this, I'm going to select this and then duplicate this here. So we have this here. So you can change the name of the doctor here. So Dr. Omi, and you can as well change the image of the doctor there. So we want to align most of this item, so I'll select this to press Shift A, select this, press Shift A, I'll select this 3 items and then press Shift A to add them in this manner. So here I'm going to adjust that to 12. Here I'm going to also adjust the spacing between these 2 items to 12, and I'll also do the same for this here, adjust that to 12. So we can now select these whole items here, item 1, 2, 3, and then Shift A, and we can adjust this to 28. That's the spacing between all of these items. So for the nav bar, it's going to be fixed here. So now we are done with this screen, so we can move to the next screen. So for the next screen, I'm going to add another frame again. It's going to be iPhone 14 here. So we're going to directly change the border radius here to 32. Then we can now carry one of this card here. I'm going to copy this and then paste it here. So I'm going to paste one of this here, and remember that this is responsive, so I'm going to click on this and then add our layout grid. So I'm going to add the mobile. So after adding the columns, I'm going to click on this and then drag this. Since this is responsive, I'm going to drag this here and then make sure that it is aligned to this, and I'll increase the height here, and also I'll do the same thing for this here. So now I can select this item here and then hide the view here. So now let's add a navigation for this item here. So I'm going to click on the rectangle here and then add a rectangle here. So I'll make sure it's aligned to this, and I'm going to add a text here, which is my appointment. My appointment. So this time I'm going to ring this here, and then it's going to be subheading, which is good. Minus the fill and then add for the stroke color. I'm going to select this muted here. Then we can add a border radius of 4 for this. After adding that, let's use accent for this instead of the muted. So I'm going to select this. Let's use accent for this. This is good. So now, after changing the color of this, I'm going to click on assets and then look for the back icon here. Drag this and then drop this here. Now we can select these two and then press Ctrl G to group them. So now here I can now select this also, press Shift A, put them in an auto layout, and we're good. So the next thing is for me to create another type of component. So to do that, I'm going to click on the asset files, and then I'll close this open this icon, scroll down, and you will have this bold icons here. So now I'll select this user, I'll select the user and then drag this to this point here. After having this, I'm going to press Shift A to put this in an auto layout. I'm going to make sure that the auto layout is a square. So you see I have 44 by 44. So I'm going to add a field to this, which is going to be the accent here. After adding this accent here, I'm going to click on this and convert that to 22. That's the border radius. So half of the width will give you this perfect square. After doing that, I'm going to add a text here for this. So this text, I'm going to say we have over 657 plus persons. And then this, I'm going to change this to this text here. Then I'm going to add another text here, which is going to be patients. here. So after that, I can now select this and then pick this small here, and then for the fill I'm going to use the muted here. So now we have this component, so I can select these 3 items and then press Shift A and then make sure that these 3 are aligned to the center, and then the spacing between them, that is good too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this to a component. So to do that, here, and I will just name this records. So now if I scroll to the top here, you see we have this item here. So now I can do this, drag this item and drop it here. So we have our first item. So we can duplicate this, Ctrl D, and then we need 4 of this, and then Ctrl D and Ctrl D. So right now you can click on this icon here, click on this. Once you click on this, we can easily swap the icons here. So if I click on back, then we can see other icons that we have. I can click back here, so I have all the other icons here. So I'll add this, double click on this, and then I can select this. Make sure you're selecting the icon, and then we can add another item here. I'll add star. So I'm going to double click on this again, make sure I'm selecting this, select this, and then we can change the color. So let's select bold and then go to messages / conversation. I'll change that to this. So these items here, we have 4 items. So I'm going to change the text here. So this is going to be yes, experts. So here I'm just going to change this to 7, and then for this, that is going to be the rating. So we can put 5.0. Then here I'll change the text to 5.0. Here is going to be rating. Then for the patients here, we're going to change that to review. So here we can say we have over 1,600 reviews for this. Now let's change the color of this icons here. So I will double click on this here and make sure that I'm changing the selection color, which is this. I'm changing that to primary for this. So here I'll do that for this individual icons here. So we can just select these items and then make sure that we're changing the fill to this. So from this, I'm going to change that to primary. So now I can select these items here and then put them in an auto layout by pressing Shift A. So this time I'm just going to drag this here. While selecting the auto layout, I'm just coming here to make sure that the spacing between them is auto, so that we can have this item well spaced. And then you can make sure that this is starting from here, and then this is also starting from here. If you want to play around with this, you can add a little margin on the left and right hand side here, so that we can have this. Then the next thing is the text about the doctor. So we can go back to our resources, and then I have some text here. So I'm going to select all of this text, Ctrl C to copy, and then we can now paste those texts here, Ctrl V, and I'll drag whatever I copied here. So I'm going to zoom in. So here now we can select this to Shift A to put them in an auto layout here. So after that, I'm going to double click on this and make sure that I am applying the style for this text, which is the subheading. So this, I'm going to apply the fill, which is the muted here. And then we can just drag this a little to get this here. And for this read more, highlight this, and then you can also change this to primary as for the read more. So the patient records, we can also do the same thing, but let's group this select this, Shift A, and then I can drag this here. So now I'm going to press Shift A and then put this to also in an auto layout. So let's check the space in here, 8. The space in here should also be 8. After having this, I'm now going to add a button, the one we've created earlier for the first screen here. So this time this button is going to be this big here. Drag this, and then I'm going to drag this here. After doing that, I'm going to change the text in here to start voice call, and then this is going to be from 13:00 to 15:00 p.m. So I'm going to select this and then make sure that I'm changing the text here to small. So after changing the text to small, I can now turn on the left icon here, which is this call icon. So I have my design like this. So let's group this item here and then align them. So I'm going to, this is group 1, group 2, and then group 3. So these two, I'm going to hold Shift A to group them, and then make sure that the spacing between them is 12 for that. And then 1, 2, 3, and then this is the fourth item here. So I'm going to hold Shift and then Shift A, and I'll make sure that these items are well aligned. So the spacing between them, I'm going to make that 32. So after having this group here, I'm going to select this frame by pressing Ctrl X to cut this, then paste this here. So but now I want it to be at the top, so I will push that to the top here. So select this, and then let's bring this somewhere to the top. So after pasting this, I use the arrow key on the keyboard to push it. Once you select this item here, you can use the arrow key to push the position here. So that's how I move that to the top. So I'm going to select this and then align this properly here, so we can make sure that this is at the center. So I'm going to add the last screen. I'm going to do the same thing, select iPhone 14 Pro, come down here, and then change the border radius to 32. After that, I'm going to create a rectangle here. So this rectangle will be for my image. So I'm going to make sure it's covering everywhere here. So after having this, I need to place an image here. So to do that, I'll click on the icon here, search for Unsplash. I have that on my recent file. So I will search for female doctor. Once we have the option, we can now select any of the female doctors here. So once this is open, I'll select, make sure you're selecting this rectangle, and then I'll select this doctor here. Once you have the doctor, select a rectangle again, and then hold Shift and then create a circle, and I'm going to still pick the same face. So we have this is going to be the profile picture. So now, after creating this item here, we need to have another rectangle. So to do that, press Ctrl D to duplicate this. So we now have two images here. What you're going to do now is go to the right hand side. You're going to see this minus the image for the first one. So we have our rectangle. So select this and change it to black. So make sure you're selecting the black color. That's 000. Then go back to the fill and reduce the opacity to 10. So you can play with the opacity as you wish. So now select this image and then drag this in here. Let's change the border radius of this to 66. So we have this. So now for this rectangle, let's rename that to filter here. So the advantage of this is that you can increase this if you want that to be darker, and then you can also reduce this. After having this, I'm going to add some buttons here at the bottom. And then to do that, we have this component already. So I'm going to drag this component here and then zoom in to add some properties so that we can reuse this. So after zooming this in, this property and then this, we don't want it to be visible for this button that we're adding. So I'm going to select this component here and then add a property. Now I'm going to add a boolean. So this boolean here is heading. So I'm going to set that to true. Then I'm going to create another property here, boolean, which is detail. And I'm also going to set that to true. So to apply this property here, you see it's not apply. I'm going to select this and then go to the layer and then I'm going to apply the heading. So I'm going to select this again, go to this layer and then apply the detail. So now I can easily turn that on and off. So if I come to this section here, let me zoom in and I select one of this item here. You see, I can now decide to hide this or hide this, and I can hide both. So we can go back and then add that to this screen. So I'm going to click on layers and then drag this here. So on this section, we don't want this turned on. So we want just the button here. After turning off the heading and detail, double click on this till you select the icon here. So now go back to this now and we are going to select the user, back to user, and then go back to bold. Then we're going to select this icon here. After adding that, I'm going to also duplicate this again, drag that, and then double click to select the icon, and then we're going to change this to another icon again. So I'm going to use this. Then I'll also duplicate this by pressing Ctrl D, drag that here, and then double click to select the mic, and then we can change that here to this. So for the color of this text, I'm going to use the danger, that's for the cancelled call. Then this two, I'm going to use the primary. So let me select this and then change that to primary. Double click on this. Change that also to primary. So after that, let's arrange this again. So I'm going to hold Shift and select this, then Shift A to put them in an auto layout. Then I'm going to select this one item and then use the arrow key to bring that to center. So for these items, I want to reduce the spacing between them to 24. Then we can push them to the bottom. So I'll just use this to push them to the bottom. But this is not where I want them to be, so I'll just align them here a bit. So use the center item here to make sure that they are at the center here. Then we can add a text here. So we can say audio recording is live active. So this is our tiny text, so we can change the fill here to white. And then I can just align this here to center. And you can push it down a bit. So we close this, and then we want to add one last thing here. Make sure that this is at the center of the screen, select that, and then do this. So we're going to add the name of the doctor here by selecting text. So I'll say Dr. Michael. So now let's change the font size here to subheading and then the color to white. And then I can toggle that and then bring this in here. So since this call has been recorded, what we're going to do is we're going to add a button. So drag this button and then drop this here. So remember, we have the small size of this. So I'm going to select the small muted and then drag this here. So I'm going to change the time. So we can add, this has been recording for 12 minutes. 12 minutes. So we can also add turn on the icon for this. I think it has an icon. We can turn on the icon for this, the icon left, and I will double click on the icon to change it. So this, I'm going to change that icon. So let's see if we have a suitable icon that can be used here. So let's go to the bold and then video sounds. So I'm going to select the pause here. So now I can do this, arrange this here, and I'll make sure that this is the center here. So but one thing is, I want to make sure that the border radius of this is rounded. So we can now look for our item here. For this, we can now look for this item here, and then while selecting this, press Ctrl D. So now we have our third variant. So I will say small muted minus rounded. So I'll just make sure I'm changing this to 20. So once this is 20, I think we're good. And I can as well change the color of that. Instead of having a fill of accent, I can change the fill here. So to do that, I'm just going to select detach this and then select white for that. So if I close this, all I need to do here is to go back to this section, select this button, and then make sure I'm changing the type here. So we have the small, rounded, and then muted. So we have this here. So let's do some little fix here. I'm going to select this icon here and then use the unsplash. And let's type user. And let's place this icon there. So here, let me close the unsplash. So instead of making the stroke white, I can make that accent here. So now for this section here, we can double click to select. Let's open this section and then select this rectangle. So I'm going to copy that and then select this section of the app and then paste it here. But this time, after pasting that, I'm going to push it to the top somewhere here. So remember that this section is a frame. We added a frame, so that's why it's able to hide this. So if you use a rectangle, you will not get this feature. So you have to change that to a frame. So I'm going to select this and duplicate again. So this time I'm going to drag this here. So I'll do the same, duplicate, and then this time it's just going to be here. So if you like tutorials like this, you want to show your support for this channel, please kindly hit the subscribe button.